I love these figures. Disney Infinity, they made such cool little figurines that translated these awesome characters from all of these different IPs into this cohesive, chiseled, exaggerated, stylized look. Maybe my favorite set of figures ever made. And I don't have a lot of them. I have a small collection. This is pretty much all of them. But I really like them. I've been playing God of War Ragnarok like everybody lately. I kind of also wanted to do some Kratos fan art. So I thought, why don't we turn Kratos into a Disney Infinity figure? Boy, so before we run off printing anything, we need something to print. You gotta have a model to print. So we gotta sculpt Kratos. I think the best way to start is to find good reference that we can use that kind of helps guide us while we create our character. And for me, I found Drax from the Disney Infinity series. He has a very similar body and proportions to Kratos, and he also has his shirt off. So it was a pretty good match. And so I used the Drax figure as my main reference. And so I really just went ahead and approached this the same as I approach any character that I'm sculpting. I roughed out shapes, blocked in proportions, tried to get things right, and then retopoed things that I wanted to be really clean. But overall, I just tried to keep it simple. I tried not to add too much detail to the figure. I really tried to pay attention to the forms and shape that the Disney Infinity series has, and I tried to match that. I think I was somewhat successful, as we'll see later, but also I could have improved in a lot of ways. And overall, I think it worked out pretty well. I took this character to pretty much completion in T-pose before posing him. In production, or just to save time, there's no reason to do this. I just did this because I think I might want to use this Kratos model for other things. So I wanted a T-pose version that was more or less complete. But once we were finished with the actual model, we had to pose him. And so basically tried to find some poses that I thought would work really well. Originally, I had a pose where he was sweeping his arms up really high, but I realized with his shelf-like shoulders and his very square-like body, I was breaking his anatomy so much to get that pose, it didn't really make sense. So I ended up settling on a much simpler pose that I thought still kind of captured the essence of Kratos and really showed off his axe. So that's what I did. And I also got out of my seat and sat in the pose myself and tried to feel the weight distribution and how that pose felt and make adjustments. And I kept tweaking the pose back and forth. And even as I started printing him and looked at iterations of the actual print, I would tweak the pose some more as it needed adjustments. And the posing portion of this is really tedious, but also really fun because that's where the personality of the character comes through. And you also kind of get a verification if your anatomy and proportions were way off or not, because a lot of times in the T-pose, you'll look at a character, especially these Disney Infinity characters where they have these really, really long arms and these stubby little legs, and they look just absolutely ridiculous in T-pose. And then you pose them and it kind of all comes together. So yeah, just trying to find that balance between the proportions, the pose, and all that good stuff. And then once we're finished with the pose in ZBrush, we basically have to finalize it. And I go ahead and Dynamesh everything that I want to be a solid object together because we need to make our mesh watertight for 3D printing. That means that there's no gaps or holes. It all needs to be one contiguous mesh. And then we decide what we want to break up. So for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Dynamesh his whole body together, have a base, and then I'm going to put some little peggies in his feet. And then we're going to put a peg in the back of Mimir's head. And then that way we have 3 different pieces. And I hope this is going to work because I'm lazy and I don't want to break it up into a bunch of pieces, but I'm probably going to eat my words, so we'll find out shortly. Now, once we're done in ZBrush, we can move over to Chidubox, which is the slicing software. If you don't know what slicing software is, it's basically what you use to turn the model into a bunch of layers of images that the resin printer can then feed the LCD screen to cure each layer of your model as it prints. So it's a very important step. And this is where we can add thickness, we can add drain holes, and then most importantly, we can add supports. So you bring your model into Chidubox, you can either hand play supports or auto-generate supports. I'm gonna auto-generate them because this is my 3rd print and I have no idea what I'm doing. So we're gonna hope for the best and see how it works. This is a learning experience for me. This is my 2nd week of having this resin printer, so hopefully everything goes well. We're gonna save it out of Chidubox, put it on the thumb drive, run into the garage, and start printing. All right, so we are in my garage right now where I've carved out a little nook for my 3D printer setup. I'm not gonna go over the whole setup in this video, but if you're interested in what I have here and how I've set up my setup for ventilation and for safety and everything like that, leave a comment and let me know. And we can maybe do a whole video just on 3D printer setup, because I've learned a lot over the past couple of weeks and feel like I have a pretty good setup for 3D printing at this point that ventilates well, is safe, and it's going to continue to evolve. I need to build out some more workstations and stuff, but we're just renters in this house, so I can't do too much. But for a non-destructive setup, I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. Now, we're pretty much ready to print Kratos. So we have everything split up. We've sliced all our objects, and now all that's left to do is print. So let's get started. Now we wait. Bye, Kratos. Just gotta wait for a while and we'll see how it goes. Also, it's Christmas. It's Christmas. Check this out. How cool is this? It's a coffee mug. All right, so we left Kratos printing overnight, hoping for the best, and we're gonna check it out now. It's finished printing. I already see some errors that we're gonna have to address, but let's get it off the build plate and assess the damages. Okay, so let's talk. We just finished printing the first version of Kratos. I dropped him and broke his axe, unfortunately. Overall, I think it's pretty good. It's taught me a lot. For one, it's taught me that even though I thought I was making everything really chunky in ZBrush and it felt chunky and it felt like I was matching the Disney Infinity style, once I printed it out, even at this scale, which I printed them at 4 inches, the details are so thin and so small. And that's not to say it's bad. I mean, it looks good, the detail printed well, and I'm really impressed with this printer, but it's not the style that I was going for. And now also looking at this printed, I'm not sure that I can even hit the Disney Infinity style with this guy without really reworking it and really rethinking him. So instead of just starting over, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna thicken up a bunch of his armor and pieces. I think I'm gonna exaggerate his hands and feet a bit. Overall, just kind of play with the proportions, try to make everything a little bit chunkier. So I don't think it will be exactly on the mark of Disney Infinity, but it should be a little bit closer and just a little bit easier to paint too, because a lot of these details are really small and I do want to paint him. The other issue we ran into is his butt blew out. If you look, I don't know if I can get that to focus, but there is a hole in his butt where some of the layers collapsed. Now, I'm not exactly sure why this happened. I'm guessing that the auto hollowing out that Chirubox did had some trouble right there, maybe with intersecting objects, even though I did Dynamesh it. So that's my guess right now. Or it just wasn't well supported and maybe it collapsed because it was poorly supported. There could be a few different things. So I'm either going to try and take a closer look at the thickness and really make sure that area looks okay in the software, or I might just print him solid and just have a really heavy duty figure. I'm hesitant to do that for the second print because I'm not sure if it's going to be the final one that I paint, but maybe I'll do that for the final one once I know it prints well. So I'm not going to bore you with the whole process. So why don't we go ahead and skip ahead to print number 2. All right, we are preparing for what is hopefully our final print. It's about 50 degrees outside right now in my garage. And so hopefully we will heat this up, give it some time to warm up, do our last prints, and then we can finally start painting. So fingers crossed. Well, looks like his butt blew out again. So we got a problem with the model. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So Kratos' ass blew out again. So I clearly have a problem with my model. Just like the first one, his butt blew out. And also you may notice his legs exploded. Now I have a reason, I have an explanation, I swear. I was testing the base that I also printed that I'll show you in a moment. And I was squeezing his legs slightly and they just exploded. So I think I have a structural issue with the legs. Now the water washable resin I know is a little brittle, so you have to be careful, and I was being a savage. I think I figured out what the problem is. Now in Chirubox, and in 3D printing in general, you can hollow out your model. You can say, hey, make it 2 millimeters or 1.5 millimeters, and it'll hollow it. But my model wasn't really set up correctly to take advantage of that because I actually have thickness on my pants in ZBrush because I have these little flaps that come off on the bottom of the legs and create thickness. So what I realized is that the thickness of the pants that I have in ZBrush isn't thick enough. I actually have to go in ZBrush and thicken that, not in Chirubox. So it's kind of messing with my head because I'm like, well, if I merge everything together and Dynamesh it, shouldn't the new watertight mesh not have anything inside it? But that's not the case, and that's a problem for a different time for my brain to sort out. So I think what I'm gonna do is just thicken the interior of those pants up a lot in ZBrush, and then that way we should be good to go, because everything else is looking really good. We went ahead and thickened a lot of the details, the belt, and just the bolts, and pretty much everything in general. I just made a little chunkier just so it reads a little bit better, in the final result here. And I think it's working really well. We just need to get the model right. But also too, before we move on, so I did print the base. I printed a second Mimir head. I just, nothing really different. I just made him a little bigger, just same thing, just exaggerated everything. And then I decided that the really wide base that I made for the first version was lame and boring. So I tried to copy what Disney Infinity did by printing a second base. And basically what I did is I printed this little base with this big connector in it. And I'm basically replicating the round base that the Disney Infinity figures have. I would love to print this in clear resin like they have, but I don't have any, so this will do. I'll just paint it black or something. And then I created this little diorama piece to go with it. And the diorama just kind of sits on top, boom. And then you got a cool little base for Kratos. And I added some pegs on that thing so that Kratos can sit on top of it, and it looks pretty cool. And this is a much better and less bland looking base than the giant disc that I had before. So I'm excited about that. So I won't have to reprint these. I think these will be good to go. Those are good. Although this did print a little odd. I'm not too worried about it for now since it is mostly gonna be covered. And then, yeah, we'll make some changes to Kratos, and then hopefully third time's a charm. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what we changed. The second version was looking really good, except that his ass blew out again. So I decided to make some drastic changes. I broke him up into multiple pieces. Now I've broken him up into his top torso, his legs, his shoulder pad, and his wrist guard. The shoulder and the wrist I didn't really need to do, but I thought it would just be easier for it would be easier for painting to break those out, so I decided to just break them out. The bases I think are going to be fine. I'm hoping that I scaled Kratos 3.0 correctly so he'll fit on the bases that I printed yesterday. We're going to see. Other than that, now we just wait and hope that this is the final print. God, I hope. I hope, because I'm running out of resin and no resin ships until after the holidays, and I want to finish this video. Yeah. Finally, we did it. Third time's a charm. Body's looking awesome. Bam. He's got holes for the different pieces. His butt printed just fine this time. Looking good. Got a little peg in there to sit the body on. Shoulder. And wrist guard. So pretty happy that we finally figured it out. And even though it took a bunch of tries on this guy, going forward on future projects, I've learned a lot and I know what to look out for now. So pretty excited that we're on the home stretch. All I need to do is sand and clean up a few areas and then prime him and start painting. And hopefully we can have a finished figure. Not a very good painter, so I hope that I do an okay job, but time will tell. It's like a less elegant Johnny Harris video. All right, so we're ready to paint. And I'll be honest, I haven't painted anything physical in a long time. I painted some Warhammer figures years ago that I got kind of into, but kind of fell off. And this paint's just been sitting since then. So I'm a little nervous that I'm gonna mess it up. I kind of wish, well, we might do some practice on one of the other models and see. The one thing I'm worried about is trying to get Kratos' skin tone right with what I have, because I don't have anything that I think matches exactly. But I'm going to be using these Citadel paints to see what I can do. I've got like an off-white, I've got a white, so maybe I can get a hue that's pretty close to Kratos. This painting thing is hard. I feel like I could title this video 3D Artist Attempts to Not Use Control Z, because that's how it feels. Just having to cope with all of your mistakes, and I have a lot of respect for really good miniature painters because holy shit, man. This is a struggle, and I feel like looking at the 3D model and looking at the renders that I did of the 3D model, I had an assumption about how this would turn out, and it's not really even close, if we're being honest. So thinking about what to do, but here, let's look at what I've done so far. So I painted Mimir. He's pretty simple. We have some pants. We have a barking dog, a base, and then we've got some other pieces. We've got the shoulder pad and the armor, but then we have Kratos, and I just feel like it sucks. Like, it's not very good. The paint's gunky. It was really hard to do the stripe. I now understand why the eyes on Disney Infinity figures are so large and weird looking. Because it's really hard to paint eyes. Trying to get your paintbrush in those little eye holes is a challenge. And so I feel very humbled right now in terms of painting these kind of figures. So I think this stuff is fine. I'm trying to decide what to do with Kratos. Do I call it here, put them together, and that's it for this video, or do I take one more stab at it? Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I think I'm gonna put him in some alcohol, strip him, and give it one more shot, and just see if I can do a better job, or if it is what it is. So let's give it one more college try. Also, I feel like this is the physical manifestation of how I manage my folders on the computer. Just chaos, but it's my chaos. That was probably more intense than it needed to be, but I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. It was a really interesting process, and it's my first time making a statue from start to finish. The painting was by far the hardest part and was way more difficult than I even thought it was going to be. So that's definitely something that I want to work on going into 2023. If you like this kind of content, hit the thumbs up. If you have thoughts or comments or questions, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. I hope you have a good holiday season and a good new year, and I will see you in 2023. Take care.